Welcome to the Graeae and Disability Arts online podcast, Disability And, bringing together thoughtful discussion and debate. This month, Graeae's Associate Director, Nickie Miles-Wildin, chats with playwright and screenwriter Jack Thorne about his work and his relationship with Graeae Theatre. This podcast contains some strong language.
Hello, I'm Nickie Miles-Wildin. I'm Associate Director at Graeae Theatre Company. I am here in my little study in Manchester. I'm a white woman. I have brown eyes, wearing glasses. I have shaved hair at the sides with a big white blondie, large lockdown fringe on top, wearing headphones, quite cool black and gold Adidas top. Behind me is my bookshelf. Jack likes what I'm wearing, obviously. I've got my bookshelf with lots of really interesting drama books and photos on top. And I am joined here on Zoom with the writer of Stage, Screen, many a Guardian article and a very interesting Twitter feed. It's the marvellous Jack Thorne. How are you, Jack?
Very good. Do I need to describe myself?
Yeah, go on. Your turn now.
Okay. I am a bald man of 41. I've got brown hair, barely. I've got blue eyes and I'm wearing a blue pair of glasses. I've got a black and blue top on and I'm sitting in my study that's got pictures on the wall behind me, one of my wife and some of my work, including cast-offs, and then some aprons on my door that were made for me by my wife, which have my theatre shows. She took pictures of the front of the Royal Court building and then made me an apron with the front of the Royal Court building on. So yeah.
Aprons, is that because you do a lot of cooking and baking, or you like to write whilst you wear aprons?
I have no idea. I have no idea what prompted it. I definitely do more cooking than her. When she met me, she could only make cereal. So, there is that. But I think mainly it's just, I don't know what occurred to her, but I love the aprons.
I love the aprons. I now have an image of you writing in just purely aprons. And now many people will as they watch or listen to this podcast. How's lockdown and the time of the pandemic been for you, Jack? What have you been up to?
So 3 things happened during lockdown of note. One is that I was able to keep writing, so that just carried on happening. The second is that my wife and I had to cope with the horrors of homeschool, which was tough. And my 4-year-old didn't struggle with the fact that he couldn't see his friends because he doesn't have any friends yet. But he did struggle with the learning thing, and there was definitely a struggle with the fact that we were kept indoors because that was not his natural inclination. And then the third thing was that I did Crips Without Constraints with you. That was really a really beautiful process that really challenged me in quite interesting ways to be able to, because I've always sort of avoided all that stuff because I get very shy, and I've always sort of thought that was okay, that I could justify the fact that I don't do anything because I'm talk to other writers and all that malarkey, but and it did take it out of me each time, but I loved it, and the writers were just such an extraordinary bunch, and I loved doing it with them. And you.
Thanks, and I love doing it with you too. And I know for you offering them those mentoring sessions, they got a lot out of it. Having that opportunity to talk to you and hear about your expertise it's just wonderful.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that's
yeah.
But yeah.
There we go. We've patted each other's backs now. That's that's cool. We've done that. So I suppose you're well known, aren't you, as a writer for stage, screen, from such things as Skins and Fades. Why was there only one season of Fades?
We were cancelled. They didn't want us anymore. Yeah.
I quite liked Fades. And
Thank
then
you.
to like more recently things like National Treasure, Cursed Child on Stage. So what was your journey into becoming the writer that you are now? Because not a lot of us know what it was.
I went to university to do a degree in politics, and I was sort of intent on either becoming a politician or an actor, and then I didn't become either because I wasn't very good at either. And I decided I wanted to direct plays, but I couldn't afford the rights to plays because they're quite expensive. And so I decided to write a play to get around that, and I fell in love. Like it was one of those sort of things where you just sort of get hit by a train. As soon as I started doing it, I loved it, and I kept doing it, writing for lots of different things. I had lots of interesting experiences as a young writer. Somewhere I, got opportunities. Somewhere I got rejected. I think we all get rejected quite a lot. A notable moment was the Graeae Open Day, actually, and then eventually the Bush Theatre decided to put on one of my plays, a play called When You Cure Me, and Jamie Britton came and saw a reading of it and said, "We're making a TV show. We think you might be interesting to be part of it." And then his co-creator Brian Elsley came and saw it once we were mounted and said, "Yeah, we definitely think you're the sort of writer we want for this." And that show was Skins, and then it all sort of just kind of went from there. One thing after another, after another, after another. There's been times that have been really bleak, but I've been incredibly lucky that the momentum has kept on, and it's been really nice.
So with being a writer on Skins, were you part of a team of writers, or was that just individual writer? How did that work?
Yeah, there was a team, and then we all wrote individual episodes. So I wrote 2 episodes of series 1, 2 episodes of series 2, and then I wrote half an episode of series 3, and then I left to do other things. So and there was a writer's room where we met once a week, but it wasn't a writer's room like you have now where people spend 10 weeks together breaking down every episode. It wasn't something like that. It was much more, let's meet, let's talk, let's see our stuff, let's talk about our stuff, and then let's write it individually.
So that progressing from Skins on, it's really kind of, I suppose, springboarded you. Cast-offs, did that come before or after Skins?
That came after. So I did, after I left Skins, there was a lot of stuff sort of bubbling around, a lot of possibilities of things. And then Channel 4 came to Joel Wilson, and who ran a company called 11 Film, and said, "Would you be interested in working on something for our disability slate?" Cast-offs was made for £100,000 an hour, which is very, very, very small in TV terms.
It's a lot in theatre terms, though. That is a lot of money. That's mega.
Yes, but it's expensive. Making TV is much more expensive, sadly, than making theatre. With theatre, you need a van and a space and an actor. With TV, you need so much stuff. And so we were very limited in what we could do and how many locations we could be in and all those things, but we were also very determined, and there was some really, really brilliant producing from Joel and Jamie on the show in terms of making everything possible. And we were originally, we were sort of, Channel 4 didn't quite know what to do with us, and we were put out twice a week on 11 o'clock, but we got really good ratings, and we got nominated for the RTS award for best drama. That it went really, really well. The idea was to prove something about audiences for disability work, but every time there is disability work on TV, it actually does really well in the ratings, and yet it still is something that everyone's frightened of. So it's just exasperating.
Why is that? Why is in TV that work? And I suppose in theatre, it's sometimes attached to that R word, the word of risk. But why is it still deemed as that if it always does have these new the highest ratings?
I mean, it doesn't have the highest ratings.
No, but has good ratings.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of fear of the unknown when it comes to disability, and there's a sense of people worrying about getting things wrong, and there's a lot of, I don't quite know how to deal with this situation, that is really, really problematic, and because there aren't, I mean, Ruth Madeley's on her way now, I think, but because there aren't established disabled stars, that's also a problem too, because shows are very star-led casting. You know, that stars do matter in terms of getting a show made. But it's also good old-fashioned prejudice. So, do you know what I mean? You know, and, where you go, there isn't an excuse for it. Well, there isn't an excuse for it. Whatever the excuses are, there isn't an excuse for it. But do you know what I mean? Like, you know, where there isn't even like a paper excuse for it, it's just, there's a lot of people who've lived very insulated lives working in TV. There's a lot of people from very exclusive lives who haven't seen the real world and who don't deal well with it.
I suppose it's that thing, isn't it? We all know that there is a massive change to make. And I think it's great seeing Ruth's journey, as you've mentioned. Because what was the programme you worked with Ruth on?
Yeah, we cast her. We were the first ones. She was working for WizKids. It was a show called Don't Take My Baby, that she was nominated for Best Actress at the BAFTAs for. So, and then since then, she's just done better and better and better. Most recently, years and years with Russell.
Yeah, and I think it's that thing, isn't it, it's that age-old argument of there are no disabled actors with those skills, but yet how do disabled actors get those skills if they aren't given those opportunities to play those characters? Jenny
and I won't tell you where, because I don't think we're allowed to say, but we took part in a panel at for an organisation, Jenny Seeley and I, where we were talking about whether there's need for quotas, how the whole thing can be kickstarted, and it was very interesting. There was representatives from drama schools there, and it's a real challenge to them to go, if we can get disabled actors through RADA, through LAMDA, through, do you know what I mean? Like just getting that seal of approval from those places would be transformative, and people are starting to listen to that. I think particularly LAMDA, but slowly pushing a badly oiled cart up a hill.
Yeah, and it is a really slow process, isn't it? That, I think about 20 odd years ago when I wanted to apply to drama school and constantly faced with that thing of we're not accessible. What's the point in spending 3 years training if there aren't those opportunities for you there as a disabled actor? And sadly to hear those excuses, because that's what they are still being churned out by some of those bigger establishments, because they can change. And I think, Sarah Frankham, or Frankers as I call her, I think, her at LAMDA is a really positive thing.
Absolutely.
For disabled actors, working class actors, I think it's
everyone.
For everyone. Yeah. I think it's going to really shake it up, and hopefully that can have a massive impact on the industry going forward. And you said you didn't want to get into politics, Jack, when you were younger. I think, great spokesperson for disabled people. What? And on that note, what's been your journey with regards to the world of disability?
It's really weird, and I don't know quite where to categorise myself. I was a disabled person. I think I can safely say that. When I was 20, I had more or less complete physical breakdown. I became allergic to heat. So I was allergic to radiators, I was allergic to sunlight, and I was allergic to my body movement. So I spent 6 months bedbound because every time I moved, it would create an allergic reaction, and I'd end up in a lot of pain. And then steadily over the next 15 years, that got better and better and better, to the degree that I feel uncomfortable describing myself as a disabled person now, and yet being part of the community still really matters to me. So it's a really weird sort of thing that, that if, when it comes to ticking a box on a diversity form, I feel like I shouldn't tick that box on the diversity form because it doesn't feel right. But in terms of membership, that open day I talked about, it was Alex Bulmer, Alex, who co-wrote Cast-Offs with me, and I love dearly. I was talking to her there, and I said, I don't know whether I should be here, and I talked about what was going on, and I talked about my pain, and she said, of course you're a disabled person. And honestly, it was like coming out. It was just this sort of huge sort of feeling of that, and I think a lot of pain sufferers have this. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's an awful lot of isolation in pain, and there's an awful lot of feeling like your struggles are your own and that no one's ever really going to get them. And there's a lot of, frankly, cruel behaviour by doctors. I had, quite a few instances of people really belittling me. And that feeling of being part of that community at that time was just the greatest feeling in the world. It just felt like, oh, right, okay, these are my people. This is where I can fit. This is where I can feel safe. This is where I can talk about what I'm going through in a way that doesn't feel like I'm either, embarrassing myself by inflating it, or, do you know what I mean? Like, just that sort of like, I don't know how you describe it, but just that sort of like warmth. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so, yes. So now I'm probably not a disabled person, but I hope I am a disabled person in the same breath. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's that thing of you've had an impairment, haven't you? And therefore the way that society has been set up for people that have impairments is that society has disabled you, and whether that's through sort of doctors' attitudes towards that feeling of probably wanting to fix you, to normalise you. I think it's all incredibly valid. You've got that lived experience. You know what it's been like to kind of face those barriers that a lot of, physical and attitudinal barriers that a lot of disabled people have to face on a daily basis.
It's interesting when I was doing press for Cast-Offs, I did a radio show, and the first question I was asked is, what is a disabled person? And honestly, to this day, that's the hardest question in the world. And that we've got these new criteria being announced for various different wards and everything like that. And it's going to be hugely complicated. It's going to be hugely complicated, that notion of definition, because there are going to be people that abuse it. And there are people that desperately need it. And, walking that line, it's the most complicated community, I think, of all the communities. It's the most complicated community because defining it is so ephemeral.
I think it is, and I think it's very much like with regards to invisible impairments, hidden impairments. It's such a weird thing as well of people going, I don't know if I belong in it. I think if you're facing any sort of barrier due to an impairment, then of course you're part of the disabled community. But like you say, will it become something that people take the mickey with? I don't know. And it's, it's really funny, isn't it? Because it feels like sometimes it's a club that people don't want to be part of until it kind of suits them. And I know I'm probably going to offend a lot of people when I say that, but it's absolutely true. And, and for a lot of us, it's a great sense of a community and a world that we all share. We get through with that support from each other. And I think that's the most important thing, is that group of shared voices. And, and let's not forget, actually, that everybody is pre-disabled, aren't they? Because I think people will become disabled, whether that's through illness or old age. I think lockdown has given me time to do a lot more reading, and watching Crip Camp on Netflix, which is just amazing to look at that movement in America, and also reading Judy Heumann's book about the kind of the disability movement, and about saying to non-disabled people, their attitudes towards disability, like, oh, well, I don't know anyone who's disabled. Well, then find people. Do you know what I mean? Oh, it's invisible to me. It's invisible because you're not looking for it, because you don't want to look for it. I'm really struggling to make sense of sort of a non-disabled privilege. And I think people need to be aware that they only have that privilege for a certain amount of time, because they are going to be part of the gang, dare I say it, and they need to do something about it. But like you say, it's because a lot of the industry, and also theatre, dare I say it, we can't let theatre off the hook either, is run by a lot of white, non-disabled, quite privileged males, who you know, disability is not in their world. And it's a real struggle, isn't it, that a lot of those narratives that are written by non-disabled people, rather than actually having a true disabled narrative to them. And that's what we've really got to, I don't want to say fight against, because it, you know, I hate this feeling of it being us and them, but it's having to really like change the thinking around it all.
Yeah.
And also, like, I mean, this is a whole can of worms we've already opened, but why not, eh? Like, playwrights, and I say playwrights because there's one in particular, but also actors who are becoming disabled, not outrightly owning it, I'm finding as well in the industry at the moment. And I wonder why they're afraid to own it. And part of that probably is because they feel they'll get put down, you know, the work they'll be offered will get smaller and smaller. I don't know, but I'm finding that at the moment as well, that there are people who are becoming disabled but are denying it.
That's very interesting.
So, what is it you love about writing? You said you just fell in love with it. How? What does it do to you?
I don't quite know. It's a love that I do not understand fully. It's not unpainful. It's quite often painful. But that process of breaking a script, I find joyful. She doesn't do it so much now because we're always busy with the kid, but it used to be that when Rach and I got together, if I was just inside my own head and being a bit, I don't know, just a bit of a dick, I guess, Rach would say, go and write something, and it would take me out of my own head. And so it's probably that. It's probably being taken out of my own head. It's probably being given the opportunity to be a tourist in other people's heads. Still feels thrilling to me. But yeah, no, I mean, it's just, I love it, yeah.
I was going to say that actually, one of my, what I've written down here, is this idea of like your inspiration for writing, and do they all live in your head? Because the amount of stuff that you churn out, you must have a lot of people in your head. So, and also, from what you've just said, you owe Rachel your career, really, don't you then? That she's going to go on, write.
But I had a career before I got with Rachel.
Okay,
so,
all right, just to clarify.
She can. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I owe her too much. I don't want to owe her that too. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, the balance sheet is very heavily balanced towards her. So I don't, you know, yeah. Yeah, no, a lot of people do live in my head, but it's never like, I'm not like one of those, you know, I'm not a great poet that just kind of walks around and goes, I feel the need for an ode.
AD there, Jack did do the flamboyant with his arms as he talks about being a poet. Yeah. And
he's now crossing his arms very hard. But you know, I don't go around and, you know, start with great lyrical thoughts in my head. I just sit at the computer and graft. You know, that I sometimes get thoughts about things in the middle of the night and all those kind of things, but generally it's just that process of creating in front of a computer that I just love the most.
Where do your inspirations come from?
I have no idea. You know, a lot of stuff comes to me. A lot of stuff is given to me and said, would you fancy having a go at this? So often it doesn't. You know, it's not something I create. I'm trying to challenge that at the moment, and I'm trying to rethink the way I work about things. work through things. But it's interesting. I've been doing a project with. I've been doing 2 projects with Genevieve Barr. We're co-writing together, which is amazing because she's astonishing. And on one project, it just kind of flew out of both of us, that we were just constantly churning stuff out. And then on another project, there was a moment when there was a sort of, oh, we don't quite know what this is. And there was a moment of sort of going back and looking at it. And because I've been doing this for a very long time, I don't really look at my process. But she did in that moment. And she was like, oh, you've stopped writing stage directions. Oh, you've stopped writing... Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, that you've stopped, you're looking for something, and so there's a different sort of churn going on. So a lot of it is it's a feeling that you just kind of get of how to tell the story. But that doesn't come in one big, lovely gloop. That comes in lots of little scoops of stuff that then are painfully assembled into a gloop.
Yeah, I hear that gloop. I think I really like the idea that you said you don't know what your process is, because for me, working at Graeae, working with a lot of our writers, I know they're struggling to go, what's my process, what's my structure? And I'm really encouraging them to kind of rip up what we know as structure and find out what their own sort of dramaturgy is, if that makes sense. So I think it's really enlightening to hear that you don't know what your process is. You just write.
Yeah. I mean, I probably would love to have a better sense of it so that it isn't so hard each time. But, you know, I'm good with what I'm... the one good thing about getting older is you do become more comfortable with your own inadequacy.
What would you say, what project are you most proud of?
I think the best thing I wrote for TV is National Treasure. I think the best thing I wrote for stage is probably Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. I also like Christmas Carol quite a lot. But, you know, I'm still waiting for the one that's just perfect.
So you're quite a collaborative writer in the room when you're working with people. Do you like to be part of that team?
Love it. I'm not a novelist. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, I don't want to be a novelist. I like being inspired by others. I like being led in new directions by others. You know, I'm just working through... When we started speaking, I'm just working through a set of notes on Series 3 of His Dark Materials, and you know, and we've been working together for such a long time on that. You know, that there's a core group of us that have been there for 4 or 5 years. You know, working. You know, and this will be the 18th episode we've done together. Do you know what I mean? The 18th hour we've made together, and still they're provoking me, and still they're challenging me to change the way I write, and I love that.
Yeah, I think collaboration is the key, isn't it? Really, having those people around you to push you and to inspire you and to see things in a different way you might not have thought about.
I mean, I think theatre, you know, it is insanely more collaborative, probably, but maybe not with the writing. That actually, that when you're in a room with actors and you're making it, it's really, really beautifully exciting, but you're always on a clock by that point. And so you're not going back and chucking a spanner in the engine and stuff like that. And often during that writing process, there's a respect for the writer that you don't have in TV. You don't have that same sort of like, this is beautiful. You know, that there's a sort of workmanlike quality to writing for TV, and so there isn't quite the sense of we all wrote this, which I think you do get in TV a bit more than you do in theatre. But that might just be me and my process.
What's your relationship with Graeae? You mentioned that. Did that come out through that open day with Alex Bulmer?
Yes, and Jenny was in charge. So I've only known Graeae under Jenny, though I do know some of the past leaders of Graeae now. And yes, so I did that open day, and then I think I wrote something else for Graeae that didn't happen. And then the first thing we all worked on together was Hunchback of Notre Dame, which I did with Alex, and then Solid Life of Sugarwater, which was just joyous from start to finish, and really challenging in a beautiful way.
Yeah, and is that how you first met Genevieve, who you're now writing with?
No, Genevieve was in the Fades. So I knew Genevieve already from that, only very vaguely, but yes, yeah. But then it was Solid Life where I just went, you're extraordinary, and I need to understand how your mind works. And then she told me she wanted to write, and Matt Fraser contacted me about disability monologues and writing something for disability monologues, and I said, I'd love to write one. I'd love to look after Genevieve writing another. I'd love to see if I can sort of script edit Genevieve a little bit so that Genevieve could get a start in TV, and Matt backed that because he's brilliant, and all the good notes were Matt. But, you know, I was there with Genevieve through it, and then following on from that, I got asked to write a piece about the Disability Discrimination Act, and I said I'd love to write it, but I'd love to write it with Genevieve, and so it's sort of gone from there.
Having looked at knowing who's involved, I think it's a great. It's going to be exciting watch, definitely.
I hope so. I'm really proud of mine. I don't think I'm even allowed to say who's in mine, but you know, yeah.
Okay.
It's been great. I don't want to. Matt Fraser's a fierce man. You don't want to get on the wrong side of Matt Fraser.
No,
you know?
you don't. You don't. Send you an angry email with lots of exclamation marks. Because you've worked with Matt quite a few times, haven't you? Now, cast-offs.
I think he's been in 5 things I've written. I think Matt is like my go-to actor. He's I love Matt. Yeah.
And as a writer, do you have that say on saying I've written this for Matt? I want Matt in it.
Sometimes and sometimes not. So I can push for Matt for something, or I can push for Jen for something, or I can push for Ruth for something, but I don't really get final say on it. I sometimes push very hard and sometimes I say right at the beginning that I'm not doing this unless. So that often, with Christmas Carol, for instance, when Matthew contacted me about Christmas Carol, I said, absolutely, I want to do it, but I only really want to do it if Tiny Tim's disabled, because I'm not interested in doing a version of this with non-disabled Tiny Tims. And he went, cool. And since then, the old Vic has worked really tirelessly, actually, to back that. And, that each year it's 3 or 4 kids that come in and do, but each year it's, just the best bit about the show. Do you know what I mean? That these amazing children getting given this chance and then killing it, so it depends on the project, basically, but I'm always sort of going, if there isn't at least one disabled actor in this, then I've failed, and there tends to be at least one.
Yeah, and that's brilliant that you're fighting that corner. And I know this is a question that's come up. No, you are. And I know this is a question that's come up from other writers to me, and I don't know the exact answer. But of just going, when I write something, should I say this is a disabled character? Should I say this is the impairment this character has, and therefore I want someone with that impairment to be cast?
I do, but I always I've worked on a play recently that's got a lead actress that's disabled, and I said at the beginning, this is the impairment this lead actress has got, but if we were to find someone else with a different impairment, I would rewrite it for that person. So that, you know what I mean? I'm not going, it has to be this, because you want the casting process to be as open as possible, and you want to get the best actor you can for the role. And so, sometimes I'm specific. When I'm being really specific, it's because I'm writing for someone I know. When I'm less specific, it's because I know what this character needs, and I know that there'll probably be a range of disabilities that fit with that. and it's just a matter of just going. There should be a flexibility within that.
So it is always best to put it in.
I think so, but then maybe put a note at the beginning going, this is, do you know what I mean? Like, this is what's in my head, but there is a flexibility within my head that can accommodate lots of different actors with lots of different disabilities. With Solid Life of Sugar Water, we just said it's going to be 2 disabled actors, and we found 2 disabled actors, and then I rewrote it for Jen. That and actually that was a process we went through, Amit and I, where we initially were like, we shouldn't rewrite it. It can just be, that she just happens to be deaf. And then it was like, no, this play is about truth, and it's about a battle, and it feels wrong if we're not acknowledging and celebrating and delving into her disability as part of it. So then we did rewrite it for her.
Thank you. There's going to be loads of scripts now with characters with impairments, and I love it, because I think that, if us as a community can make a change as well, it's our writers that can do that for us as well, and help change the industry. And
the thing I'd say is, like, no one knows the right word for anything in the non-disabled world, and so they need as much help as they can get. It's to their shame they don't know, but at the same time, as easy as we can make it, the better. It should be that thing of just a velvet revolution.
Yeah, definitely. We make the change. Make the change we want to see. Is that right? Is that what they say?
Yes.
Be the change
you want to be in the world.
That's the one.
Yeah.
You talked briefly about this project you're writing with Genevieve about Disability Discrimination Act. Is that like a UK version of Crip Camp? Are we going to be excited by it? Sell it to me, Jack.
It's about Dan. I love Crip Camp. Crip Camp is very American, I think. The British way of doing things is a bit more punky. I mean, Dan was very, very punky. So it's about Barbara and Alan, and about that whole incredible community of people, and the battles they fought and the way they fought it. So, Crip Camp was a lot of very determined, very sincere individuals. We want this to be called, I don't know whether we're going to get away with it, but we want this to be called Piss on Pity, which was a central, one of their central campaign slogans. In Crip Camp, no one would wear a t-shirt with Piss on Pity on it, but these guys were punks, and they did,
So have you been researching Dan and the movement?
Yeah, which has been amazing, because they're incredible. They're an incredible bunch of people.
So are you fully politicised?
Am I fully politicised?
Do you feel like you want to go out there and piss on pity now? Would you wear the t-shirt?
Well, I would definitely wear the t-shirt, though I'm worried that it would be misconstrued on me. I don't know whether I would have the balls to handcuff myself to a bus. The most radical... I've attended a lot of marches, and I've done a lot of those kind of things. The most radical I've ever been is when we tried to close all the Vodafone shops and all that movement about tax and tax dodgers. So that's the most radical I've ever been, and I was a bit scared that I was going to get arrested the entire time, and I don't quite have the same sort of I'm just not brave enough, I don't think. But I don't think there's many that are as brave as that Dan lot. They were just crazy nuts.
They were brilliant, and I always remember that I am sitting on the shoulders of those giants.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what they did with regards to access towards public transport, it's been amazing, and getting into buildings, and
it was so interesting because during when we were announced that we were doing this, that they announced it with the title Independence Day, and we'd insisted on a question mark after Independence Day, but I had so many old trots coming at me and going, you aren't saying the Disability Discrimination Act was a good thing, are you? Because if you are, we are not on board with that. This is not what Dan was about, and we are still very, very angry about it. And I was like, that's why there's a question mark. Please notice the question mark. Please notice the question mark. I think they'll be a lot more comfortable. If we get away with Piss on Pity, I think they'll be a lot more comfortable with that title than with Independence Day.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then when will that go out? What are the plans for that? When will it?
We haven't filmed yet. We got stopped by COVID. So, we're working towards it.
And is that going out on TV?
Yes, the BBC.
Oh, that BBC? 1, 2?
2.
Nice. Well, keep us posted on that, won't you? And let us know.
Of course. Yeah.
We'd love to. And hopefully it can still be Piss on Pity, because that would just be,
Absolutely.
That would be mega.
I completely agree. It's the right title for it.
It is.
But let's see,
what happens between now and then. Okay, just 2 more questions, because I'm wary of time, because we've been chatting for a while. Have you got any advice for writers, particularly disabled writers, who I know many have been part of a writer's room, have maybe felt more like a tick box than they have actually been able to put their material across? Any advice you could give any deaf or disabled writers that are wanting to forge their career in the industry? And that could be theatre, screen, whatever.
The first advice is, I'm sorry there are still doors to kick down. I'm sorry that you're still required to kick those doors down. I'm sorry that you do feel like a tick box exercise sometimes. And I also don't doubt you are a tick box exercise sometimes, and that's awful. But stay hungry, keep pushing, keep writing. The world is hungry. The world is hungry for disabled stories. Finally, I do feel that there are more and more being commissioned by TV, a lot more than there was 10 years ago, and there's a lot. The attitudes are changing. In the last couple of years, we've had Fleabag, followed by I May Destroy You. It does seem like the next big storytelling explosion should be disabled storytelling. That someone should come and do an I May Destroy You for disabled stories. I've got a feeling that's getting closer and closer, but I'm sorry. It's going to be a struggle, and I'm sorry that people are going to say stupid things to you, because they are, and you're better than them.
Yeah, and I think, like, talking about I May Destroy You, Michaela Cole's McTaggart lecture at Edinburgh, it was about 2 years ago. That, what she was saying, I'm like, the parallels between that and disabled writers, I think it's really key, actually. And about for her, like, not having that knowledge of the language of TV, but yet being told her story had to be X, Y, and Z, whereas she wanted it to be FHI, all mixed up, but still it was like certain people telling her this is what the narrative is.
Personally, I think I May Destroy You is one of the best bits of literature of the last 10 years in TV, film, theatre, everything. It's just extraordinary bit of storytelling, and it did feel like she put herself on screen, and not herself, but you know what I mean, her notion of storytelling on screen, and redefined television a little bit in the process, and that is going to when someone does a disabled version of that, then we'll be good.
Yeah. So no pressure to those disabled writers out there, but come on, clock's ticking. Okay, so what have you not adapted that you'd love to do?
Nothing. I really want to do my own stuff now. I've done a lot of adaptation, and I'm sure that I'll get pulled into other stuff again. But I like doing my own stuff.
Cool, brilliant. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for taking the
Thank
time
you.
to chat to me on
Thank
Zoom.
you.
It's been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Really lovely talking to you, and see you soon.
Visit graeae.org and disabilityarts.online for details of productions, events, interviews, opinions, reviews, and learning opportunities.